Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to today's town hall. It is wonderful to see such a full room, such excitement in the room, and I take it as an indication of how interested and engaged we all are in our community here today. My name is Marie-Len Budworth. I am a faculty member from the School of Human Resource Management in the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies, and I will act as your moderator today. So, before we get started, I just want to reflect a little bit on what a town hall is for. So today we're here to hear a little bit about what is happening with the university, and also this town hall is part of our ongoing effort as a university to ensure that there is communication among all members and all stakeholders within our community. So I hope you'll join with me in engaging in a conversation that is constructive and meaningful, and that we get to hear a lot about what is happening for us and with us at this university. Before we get started, there are a few things that I'd like to mention. We will begin with a presentation from our president, who will share his remarks. Today there's a theme with regards to the remarks. The theme will be on the proposed new campus in York Region. Following the presentation, there will be a period of time for question and answer. We'll have about an hour, at which time we'll entertain questions from a variety of places. Of course, we'll accept questions from the audience, those of you in the room today. We also have those joining us via webcast. Welcome to you as well. And we'll receive questions via Twitter and email through the Town Hall website in order to field questions from those groups as well. So just for those of you who are following us on Twitter, we are at YorkU Town Hall. Please use that to send in any questions that you might have. Without further ado, at this point, it is my great pleasure to introduce York University's president, Mamdouh Shoukri, and invite him to take the stage.
You know, I'm sorry I'm going to say sorry to the organizers, because I'm just walking in, I decided to deviate from the script. I'm not going to stand here, so I'll be able to stand up here and talk to you. It's really wonderful to have these town hall meetings. We started that a few years ago, and the idea is to share some of what is going on campus with the community, but most importantly, actually to have an opportunity for a dialogue. The other thing, too, is that many times in the university setting, we are presented with opportunities where you have to get in and seize the opportunities. And sometimes it comes at a faster rate than you expected or that you want. It's not the optimum rate where you want to actually have time to think and reflect and so on and so forth before you get going. But what helps you to deal with this, the need for immediate response, and what make it possible for you to seize opportunities as they arise, is the availability of a plan, a good plan. And York is blessed with the fact that we have had a strategic plan that was developed, the University Academic Plan, on the basis of the white paper, and most of you know that how it evolved through broad consultation and so on and so forth. And it provides us with a blueprint of what we want to do. So when you see an opportunity, you are in a better position to seize it when you see an alignment between the plan and the opportunity presented to you. Or you can actually, in your response to the opportunity, you can align yourself with the plan so you never really deviate from what you want to do. That is to say that you don't seize opportunity by doing things that you don't want to do or you shouldn't do. You seize opportunities in order to turn these opportunities into the direction that you want to be. And that's the beauty of planning. So somebody said that the plans are not important, the planning process is the most important thing, because it allows you to set your mind on what you want to do and what you want to achieve, and it provides you with a menu of alternatives that you can use as you are trying to achieve your priorities. Now, there are many things happening in the university that we can talk about, but I chose to talk to you a bit about this opportunity that presented itself to us, which is developing a York University campus in the York region. I have a bit of cold, so I will keep going to the water once in a while. So this is really what I want to talk about today. So, of course, you all know the history of the university. In 1959, we started as a small liberal arts college at Glendon, and in 1965 was the first class offered in this fantastic campus, which, as you know from the pictures and everything, was basically an open field. It was interesting, just always something I bring up to remind people of the incredible growth we have gone through that was not really part of the original plan, and some of the consequences of that fast growth affected what we are today in a very positive way, in some sense, sometimes in a bit of a negative way, which is the fact that our student population in 1980 reached over 20,000 students, while the plan in 65 was that by 1980 will be about 7,000 students. So those of you who witnessed the double cohort, York had a triple cohort for 15 years in a row. So, but that's wonderful because it's allowed many great things to happen. It came up with its problems, but it allowed us to do many things. We are now one of Canada's preeminent educational institutions, excellent teaching, it's excellent academic program, excellent research activities. We are one of the most engaged universities. University was built on a commitment to social justice, fairness, and equity. This is one of the important characteristics of our university, and we are recognized to be a leader in that. Add to them our commitment to sustainability and the fact that we keep being recognized as the most sustainable campus, or the strongest commitment to sustainability. We have a diverse academic programs that really quite wonderful. It adds to the breadth of knowledge that we provide to our students. We are also located in an area, although it used to be seen as almost out of town, we are now in the center of population growth and social and economic development in the GTA. And with the subway arriving here, as I always say, York will no longer be the university uptown. We are the university we will be the university midtown. And we will be able to benefit a great deal from the social and economic activities that will be evolving around us and the significant population growth. Of course, we have one of our jewels, one of the jewels in the York's crown is Glendon, as the only bilingual post-secondary education institution in South and Western Ontario. I can go on about the great things we have. I've said that before. We have incredible humanities, social sciences, business, law, environmental studies, science, and so on and so forth. But we continue through our academic planning to protect our strength and at the same time become more comprehensive by expanding science, building engineering, and expanding health, and by intensifying our research activities in order to join the group of the so-called research-intensive university, which I believe we are in there already, but we need the activities that reflect the tremendous research strength that we have, and we need to share that with the world and transfer our knowledge into social and economic activities whenever it is possible without compromising our mandate, our fundamental mandate as an academic and educational institution. So this is where we are today. Now, the idea of a York university campus in the York region actually isn't new. There's nothing new under the sun, as they say. We found traces of that everywhere. In fact, I was talking to a person who pointed that out to me was the former President Harry Arthurs. It's not a secret that I chat with him once in a while, and he said to me, you know, we've had that in one of the planning documents. So always we saw ourselves as the university of the York region, and we saw always the potential for having a campus in the York region. Now, with our strong academic plan, with our eyes on the York region being the area experiencing the fastest growth of population and economic activities. With that plan in mind, opportunity did present itself. Where in December 2013, the Ministry of Technical College University created a framework for what they called major capacity expansion. And essentially, they offered the universities the opportunities to expand their presence, to accommodate more students, essentially on satellite campuses or other campuses that to be located in areas that are less served than others in terms of post-secondary education presence, or in some sense allowed also expansion on existing site, although the preference was to the former. We seized this opportunity. We put a letter of intent. I've shared that with people in different bodies, but at the end of the day, we put a letter of intent. A proposal is expected to be submitted in September 26 in a couple of weeks, and we expect cabinet decisions on that by the spring. There's no confirmation of that, but that seems to be the logical next step. I will go through some aspects of how did we choose the site in Markham and why Markham in the next few slides. This is really how our response to the provincial government major capacity expansion framework. We are not going to limit our response to a potential campus in the York region. We'll also mention a number of other activities that we have. Some of them may not require government funding, others will require funding government, and we as the government expect, we're sharing with them all the projects. For example, Student Center is funded by the students, but at the same time, we would like to mention that to make sure that the government understands what our aspirations in terms of infrastructure building on campus. So here's the York region. Well, the York region, as I said earlier, is the region that is expecting the fastest growth of population, particularly of those between 18 and 21, the typical age of university entry. The second thing is that the York region, as stands today, without the projected growth, it's about 1.2 million people, and it is the largest municipality in North America without a post-secondary institution, without a university. Of course, it is blessed with a great college, but it does not, Seneca College does not have a university. It's part of their aspiration to have a university. That's the first justification of being in the York region, or the first reason to meet the criteria for government, the location, the population, and the projected population growth. The second thing, that in order to be able to maximize the benefit to York University and maximize the potential for York University to serve the community, we opted for a very transparent, detailed process of inviting all municipalities to submit proposals to us as why we should locate in their municipality. It's a process we've gone through. Of course, I have to share this with you. It feels good when every municipality is keen to have us there. It shows you the stature of the university. And they made presentations, and we used a panel of experts in every related field, from transportation to sustainability and what have you, in order to reach a decision, and the decision was that we be located in Markham. And I'll go through some of the rationale for that. First of all, I mean, these red sort of rectangles reflects the areas we were invited to be in. The yellow circle is Markham. This is where we'll be located, right in the Markham center, between Kennedy and Warden, and north of the 407, south of Highway 7. Those who are familiar with the location there, right in between, where in fact adjacent to where the new Pan Am center is being built, and very close to the transportation hub that's under development, and the YMCA facilities. So it's really in the center of an major urban development with significant population growth and significant private sector, public sector infrastructure evolving. Again, so one of the reasons which is really aligns with what we want to be and what the call for proposals by the government wanted, we'll be in a really vibrant urban center. It is close to transit. It's transportation was the main advantage of that site. And I'll show you that in another slide. It is attached to very useful facilities, which can be where we can leverage the public infrastructure and facilities like Pan Am game facilities, like YMCA, like the local library, and so on, in order to turn these as an advantage to our new campus through building partnerships with these people, and hence avoid cost of building certain services for our students having the appropriate linkages. The campus will be, as government expected, can accommodate more. In fact, we have a plan to accommodate over 6,000, the number for the government's 5,000, over 6,000 students in the next 10 years. But we wanted a site that has the campus can accommodate that. We wanted a site that can accommodate in the long run up to 15 to 20,000 students, given the significant growth we experienced here. We expect some growth will happen here, but that will be in the very long term. I don't know what the word "very" means here, but in the longer term. So the other important thing about the criteria for selection, you know that there are a number of models people used and so on and so forth in terms of sharing land, sharing buildings, and so on and so forth. We wanted land that under York University's control. Not that we're not looking for partnerships. Partnerships are good, but partnerships need to be on our terms. And being frank with you, I said, as people here who attended some of these meetings, I said, I'm not into a partnership in which York University does not have the final say and the total control. And this land that's been assigned to us is our land for our total use. Now, we can build partnerships to enhance our operation and for the benefit of our academic activities and benefit for our students and enhancing the experience of our students. But we're not going to tie the hands of academic decisions through any kind of partnerships. These are some of the criteria that the government put together, but we used it for to evaluate the proposal, which is to be in an urban setting, to be supportive of social and economic development, to be in a vibrant new urban development, programs to be programs that are, from our point of view, we needed to make sure that the programs that go there, and this will continue, the academic program development will continue to happen from now and after we get approval hopefully, but this is an ongoing process. But the program essentially will need to be programs that are in high demand, programs that represent an expansion or an extension of programs on the Kiel campus which cannot meet the demand. Because as you know, we have huge unevenness on campus. There are many programs that we cannot meet the demands, then we can extend them there since they are in high demand, as well as adding new programs to the in this site, which are expected to be of high demand. That's part of the alignment between what we're going to do at Markham and what was happening here. As I said earlier, it has to be aligned with our academic plan in terms of program offering, in terms of research intensification. It is not going to be an undergraduate campus. It will be a campus that will support graduate education and will support research intensification. It will be being there in the middle of an evolving community with, as I said, tremendous social and economic activities. It will be a campus where we can engage the communities in our research and, frankly, in taking some of the research results to serve the local community and the broader community of Ontario and Canada. So the campus is in the right location to do all of this for us. What do I have here? So here, this is the vision. Urban campus connected to community, advances university academic plan, pedagogical innovation, In that sense, it's also important to say that this will be an opportunity for us to try technology-enhanced learning, more models of that. It could be actually a pilot, given the smaller size, a pilot for trying many ideas in order to scale it up and bring it back to Kiel. So there'll be a tremendous opportunity for innovation there. So this is the vision for the campus. The programs will be, again, aligned with the university academic plan, that will be interdisciplinary in nature. There will be a range of programs, as you can see, life sciences, design. This is sort of the preliminary list in consultation with the deans and others. Business, IT, education, liberal arts, and some of the programs, in fact, I expect somewhere among those 6,000 plus students to be something in the order of 900 to 1,000 students who will be taking the new programs that we are developing jointly with Seneca, which is something has been going on for the last 4 years in terms of developing joint programs, again, to respond to the student needs. The enrollment, as you can see, I mentioned that already, and that was will be by 2024, in 10 years, will be over 6,000 students, and in the longer run, we would like to see a campus that can accommodate 20,000 students. At this point in time, we have no plans to do anything special about governance. Programs there will still report to existing faculty, at least in the early going, but there will be probably a potential to have a senior university officer to oversee the evolution of that campus in the early going. I'm not going to go through this. You can see it, some of the potential academic programs we're offering there. I'm not going to go through this, but because I've talked about them in my own way. So as you can see, there are people who don't change. I never follow a script. So, but this is really, I think I mentioned all of these things. It's important that it is aligned with our academic planning. It is important that the new campus will generate opportunities for community-based research and innovation. And it is important that that will be an incubator for new ideas in every sense of the word. Remember, one of the things York has that characterized York in the early going, being young and evolving, was the innovative spirit that drove York and resulted in the creation of many programs, particularly interdisciplinary programs, that were unique at the time. This is an opportunity to repeat that in a different setting. The location, as I mentioned, this is the location. This may not be very clear, but as I said, it's bound in the southern part, end by 407. Highway 7 is north of that. Kennedy on the east side, and Warden on the left side. And I'll show you some more details of the site. This is the site. For those who know the area, I think the one that's turning around is Enterprise Boulevard. You see the sign for the Pan Am Games. Everybody sees that at the corner of this area. These green buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, these are the potential York buildings in that area. As you can see, the city of Markham also is offering us, other than offering us the land, offering us the cost of 1,000 parking spots that will allow parking, although with and the YMCA is there, so it will be an ideal. And down at the corner, this is the transportation hub that will, and I think there's a picture here. This is sort of campus building. This is typical architecture renderings. I hope it will be even better looking than these buildings. I'm not kidding, actually. Oh, that's all. Okay, in that transportation hub, I want to tell you something. I thought I may have a picture there. There's the GO bus that comes from the northern part, northeastern part of York down there. There is all the GO buses will end up there. In fact, some people called it the future Union Station North. So all the GO buses end up there. There will be, I think you can see that if you go there, started already to take shape. A rapid transit line from along Highway 7 from there all the way to this campus. So in some sense, although we're looking for a self-sufficient campus, in some sense, it would be a great opportunity because of the easy connection between that campus and the parent campus here, is that they can live, the transportation is easy, the movement is easy, therefore programs there can leverage the diversity, the incredible diversity of programs and opportunities here. We have, this is the primary partnerships. There are many partnerships that we have. We are partnering with Seneca on the academic level to develop joint, it is going to be York University degrees, but jointly offered with Seneca. Markham, the city of Markham is offering us the land, and as you heard from the media, York Region is committed to investing $25 million in the project. These are other agencies with which we are building agreements in order to make sure that we leverage their infrastructure to support the new campus. It doesn't, adding to this, there's significant amount of private sector partnerships that are potentially there. But again, as usual, we have a clear mission as an academic institution. Our fundamental mission is to prepare the next generation of Canadians for life. Our fundamental vision is to transfer knowledge, disseminate knowledge to our students and to the community. And these are the guiding principles that we have as we develop partnerships beyond these partnerships with public organizations as we move on to develop partnerships with private organizations. For example, unlike what is happening in other universities, there are the Cineplex theater that's evolving there that can be used as lecture halls and so on as at the outset in order to help move that campus along. All of these are facilities that will make this campus a unique campus in the eyes of the government as we proceed with submitting the proposal. And this is what are the things that are available in the neighborhood in their conference centers that can be used in the future, as I mentioned, through building partnerships there. And frankly, once we have made the announcement, most of these organizations are reaching out to us. I've had the library, YMCA, Pan Am, Cineplex. Everybody's reaching out to us and saying, what can we do? So there's significant support from the community that is coming our way. These are the letters of support that were prepared from the local communities. This is the agencies or companies putting letters of support. Of course, having a campus there is not only, I mean, the government says, for good reason, says they wanted the new campuses to be in areas of urban development. This is for a good reason, because the campus will benefit from these interactions with the community significantly, but at the same time, these communities will benefit from having an educational institution in its midst. That will be good for economic and social development. That will be good for community-engaged learning for our students, community-engaged research for our researchers, and for disseminating knowledge and turning the knowledge into services to local communities and beyond. So I should say that just not to make it clear, I mean, maybe I get a little too excited about things and may give the appearance that is in the bag. Nothing is in the bag. We're putting a proposal. Every university in Ontario is putting a proposal. Some of the proposal, a few of them like ours, like Laurentian, like Wilfrid Laurier and so on, involves another campus, which was the original intent of the government. Others are proposing to expand on site, but each university is submitting a proposal. However, I believe that this proposal has tremendous advantages. One, from our point of view, let's start with our point of view as a university. It is aligned with our academic plan. It is aligned with, it will support our objective of becoming more comprehensive and more research intensive and do more community-engaged research. And I define community-engaged research in a broader sense, including taking knowledge into the marketplace. but it's all community engagement. I think it will support our objective to be that. It will raise the profile of York University. From a provincial point of view, it will provide services that is missing in a very important urban area that is populated with young people looking for university education. So there's a shortage there. We're going to fill that. It is in a location where it can leverage significant public expenditure in infrastructure. So everything is aligned for us to get that. And as I said, some people say, well, don't. I said, I don't really put application with the expectation that it may work. I put application with the expectation it will work. So this, it will work, and I'm sure that we're going to be called upon to come and carry on. And again, we will continue to work with you and with everybody on campus, and most importantly with the governing bodies, Senate and the Board of Governors, as appropriate to move this forward. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shoukri. So we will move into the question period, so I'll invite Dr. Shoukri to take a seat. I'll also invite to the stage and introduce briefly our vice presidents, the vice presidents of York University. I invite Rhonda Lenton, Provost and Vice President Academic, Gary Brewer, Vice President Finance and Administration, Robert Haché, Vice President Research and Innovation, and Jeff O'Hagan, Vice President Advancement. Thank you and welcome. So my job as moderator is to make sure that we have that those who want to participate have an opportunity to participate and to engage as many people as possible. In order to do that, I'm going to set a few ground rules. And they are simple. They're simply that, if you are in the room and you'd like to ask a question, please make yourself known. We have some folks walking around with microphones who will help you to make yourself heard. If you could, when you're speaking, let us know who you are, what part of the university you come from, and then state your question. That would be quite helpful. And if you could keep your question to a smaller length so that we can fit in as many questions as possible. As I noted, we'll also be accepting questions from email and Twitter. We have our media team back here who are monitoring the Twitter feed and the email inbox. The hashtag again for this conversation is hashtag YorkUTownHall. Hashtag YorkUTownHall, and you can find the email address on the Town Hall website. So I invite you to start sending those questions in at any point. Okay, I think that's all the housekeeping. Oh, one last point. If I could ask that you turn off your cell phones so that they do not disturb those who are asking questions or those who are answering questions, that would be very nice. So let's open it up. Let's start with opening it up to the floor. Are there any questions in-house that we can begin with? Thank you. I see a question here.
Hi, I'm Michelle Miller in the Division of Students, and there's been a lot of engagement and consultation, obviously, in working at this plan. So I kind of had a two-part question. The first is, do we know approximately timelines if the approval is granted? And then the other piece is, do we have a strong sense of how we gauge against those other universities and their proposals?
How do we?
What are our chances compared to some of those other proposals?
Well, first of all, I don't, as usual, I'm not going to be the only one who answers questions. In fact, I appreciate it if you direct the difficult question to somebody else. But let me say first is that, what was the first one? Yeah?
Timeline.
Timeline. Well, the government has not put in writing a timeline. That if you can think it this way, we've gone through this elaborate process. I expect that we're going to hear about it in the spring, and I expect that there'll be some funding appearing in the next budget in the spring. But I expect that funding will be over a period of time. So realistically, I don't expect we'll be digging hole in the ground in the next 1 or 2 years. Will be quite, maybe 17, 18 we're going to start. But this is kind of the timeline I see. I don't see something happening right away, but we hope to hear from the government after all of this work. But there's something to set up in the future. Now, the other thing too is that, as you know, that expectation in terms of student entry to universities will stay flat for the next 3 or 4 years, and then will pick up again. And I think this is where the government wants to catch that by creating this new capacity to enroll students in sort of 2019, 20 or something at that point.
Thank you.
So in terms of competition, let me put it this way. I think we're offering something unique. We're offering an opportunity to expand in an area that is not served, unmet demand. This is not given the region as compared to other regions that there's, like Laurentia wants to expand in Barrie and so on. This is really where the demand is, so we have that advantage. A second advantage is frankly, the government should look at a university of our size can leverage what it has on the main campus to serve a young, evolving campus the way we serve our other smaller campus at Glendon. So if I have a small campus and behind you, you're backed by a large campus with tremendous diversity of programs, activities, and expertise, this is an asset that other universities do not have. I think the level of support we're getting from the local municipalities in terms of financial support and in terms of other support by the local communities will be as good, if not better, than any. And as I said, I can't accept to be second to anybody, therefore, York is York. We're going to get that.
Thank you. So I have to apologize. I have made a mistake 3 times, the same mistake. The hashtag is YU Town Hall, YU, not York U. I'm incapable of saying York U Town Hall, if you're trying to get to us. There are people, though, who are savvy enough to have found a workaround, as we have received some questions via Twitter. So here's our first Twitter question. This one's addressed to Vice President Brewer. Will the new campus have its own amenities, such as a library, gym, student residences? This is from Excalibur.
That's a great question, and it also, I think, responds to how the university has developed its proposal to government to try to create, I think, a pretty compelling case for York. So obviously, as we've been planning the campus, the President's touched on the core academic programs we'll be offering. We have also paid attention to the need to create a student experience on this campus that would be equal to the kind of experience they would get on the Kiel or the Glendon campuses. So that said, we are looking at providing library space. We are looking at providing food service. We are looking at ensuring that there's athletic and recreational space available to those students. But the manner in which we'll be providing those amenities will be a little different. So that's why you see in the slides earlier that we are going to be very close to the Pan Am Center. There's a pool there, there's gyms there, there's recreational space there. So it's already built, and we, through our relationship with Markham, will have access for York faculty, staff, and students in that space. Just to the north of the campus, there's the Carruthers Center, which has high-performance athletic space. The outdoor fields are owned by the town of Markham. We'll work with Markham to make sure that our faculty, staff, and students have access to those spaces. In the case of library, in the design of the building that we're putting forward, we have paid a great deal of attention to library space, which Catherine and her colleagues, I'm sure, will appreciate. But we're doing it in a way that leverages the investments we've already made to serve the core York University faculty. We've spent a great deal of effort digitizing an awful lot of our resources, electronic access. Students will have access to that material. In some ways, libraries have become as much as anything student spaces. And so in the design of the new campus, we have actually put a heavy emphasis on creating student spaces that normally you might find here at a library on the Kiel campus or at Glendon. So if anything, in terms of the building footprint, we put a huge weighting on those kinds of library/student spaces so that the kind of experience that students will have on this campus will be second to none. So I think it's fair to say all of the usual amenities that you would expect will be there, but we just may be delivering it in a different way.
Thank you. Great. I'm going to ask another question from that's come to us through one of our media sources. This is from Ali. He has asked, or Ali Jones has asked, how does the proposed campus in New York region align with the 6 priorities areas that are identified in the strategic research plan? Perhaps VP Haché can address this one.
Okay, thank you for that question. It's a great question. I mean, this is a terrific opportunity for us in developing the new campus. You saw a preliminary list of some of the academic programs that we're looking to build on the new campus, and in all of those programs, we have existing research in our areas of strengths, in areas of opportunity. So it's having a new campus, new development is going to have absolutely a positive impact on the development of research, the strengthening of research at York, building up new areas, and also building new partnerships. We already have a presence in Markham. You may know the Markham Conversion Center, where Innovation York has a footprint for entrepreneurship and new business commercialization. That will allow us in the new campus to expand our interaction with the technology sector, the financial sector, other sectors of business that have a presence in Markham. And we've already had some initial conversations about potential interactions with groups like the Markham District Energy, which will be providing energy for the new campus. The YMCA, which is, as you saw on some of the slides, is located close by. So there are going to be multiple new possibilities for developing research and developing partnerships in research with the community, with businesses, and community groups.
Thank you. I saw some hands in the room earlier. I wonder if I could see those again and direct some of our microphones to some of these spaces. Would it be easy to get a microphone there? And as we're getting that microphone to that individual, I'll ask a question that has been handed to me from David Phipps that's come in through our media. This is for Rhonda Lenton. What are the interdependencies between plans for the new campus and the AAPR process?
Yes, let's give me the easy question. Well, look, the academic and administrative program review process, we all know that the reports are due November 1st, end of October. And a major set of reasons about why we're undertaking that review, which is, I think, very different than what other universities have done with these kinds of exercises, is to really try to grapple with some of the challenges that the university is facing, particularly, I would say, around enrollment, and how we can position ourselves strategically in Ontario and frankly, globally, about enhancing our strengths, our quality, our reputation, so that we are advancing our own priority of being a premier institution over the next 20 years. And when we think about that strategy overall of advancing our reputation, gathering information from that, we would want all of the information that emerges out of those task force reports, and when each of our faculties, and as well as the other divisions, have an opportunity to take up those reports and reflect on what the findings are. So what are some of our strengths and what are some of our challenges? We would want that conversation to fold into and inform any planning that we would have with the new campus, and also to identify how could we leverage that new campus, the extension of York, to actually deal with some of the challenges that might have been identified with the task force report. So we would hope that every single faculty and every division, when they have those conversations and take up those reports, the new campus will be just one more opportunity that can be taken into consideration when they're thinking about their overall response, how to strengthen their programs, enhance the reputation of the university, and deal with some of the challenges that we have, including our enrollment. This new campus is a tremendous opportunity for us to be thinking very strategically about our enrollment and how we're actually going to ensure that we have the plans in place that we need to advance the university. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Olaf Schlu. I work in human resources. I've heard some discussion about life sciences, and I saw, I think, two of the organizations that were showing interest were the Markville or Stouffville Hospital and Southlake. I'm wondering if this is providing some way of a stepping stone to a medical facility or a school for medicine for York.
Well, there's no question that School of Medicine for York has been a long-term aspiration for the university. There's no question about that. And I think it is needed both from an academic point of view and both from actually a societal point of view, because a medical school at York University that is focused on primary health care and community medicine would provide this area with something that is extremely needed and will complement what other medical education that's taking place in the city. There's no question about that. In our strategic mandate agreement, which has a duration of 3 years, we certainly put this as one of our aspirations. Government understands that this is part of our aspiration. Now, when we build life sciences and we strengthen our faculty of health, I agree with you that this really will all help eventually in supporting an evolving medical school. However, we're not doing this because we are medical school obsessed. We're doing this because it is the right thing to do, and the demand is incredible. When you look at our admission pattern, our enrollment patterns, we turn away students who are interested in life sciences and health, certain areas of health, with extremely high grades. And these are very qualified students, Canadian students who are interested in studying in these areas. And we don't have the capacity to take more than we have already, in spite of the wonderful building that we managed to build in the last few years in life sciences. This has been a long overdue issue to expand York's presence in life sciences. So we're expanding it because it is needed. We're expanding it because it's high demand, as it happens to serve ultimately in sort of the idea of eventually having a medical school. This is actually a bonus, but that's not the only reason we're doing it.
Do we have another question from inside the house? Oh, thank you, up in the balcony.
Good morning. Thank you for a very good presentation. My name is Jose Echeverry. I'm a professor at the Faculty of Environmental Studies. And the question that I have has to do with one of the previous slides that you showed, President Shoukri, the one that talks about the 10 points of the proposed campus. And number 7 say that, and I quote, this campus would be a model of smart growth and sustainability. And I wanted to ask a question, what does that mean in relation to the footprint of the new campus itself, and how that footprint would inform research and pedagogy in that campus?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I will respond to the best of my ability and ask my colleagues to chip in. Really, this is an opportunity. We're very proud of our record in sustainability, which presents itself in so many different ways on our campus, sustainability of the campus, and in terms of engaging students in learning about sustainability. And this is an opportunity. We have a new campus. We have to make sure that the buildings we build will reflect that commitment. We have to make sure that our interaction with the local community will reflect that commitment in terms of the footprint, in terms of the use of facilities, in terms of everything we consume there, in terms of everything we use there. We would like to adhere to the highest possible standard of sustainability. This is an opportunity also for us as we develop the campus to engage our researchers and our students in defining what do we do with the campus to make it a model for sustainability. I'm sure our Dean of Environmental Studies has ideas. She already had talked about ideas. So I invite anybody to add to this. Yeah, Gary?
Great question, Jose, and as you can imagine, I'll probably focus on some of the more physical aspects of your question. But certainly when we apply that principle through the lens that I often bring to these questions, you saw on the slide there Markham District Energy. So the provision of energy to that campus will not be done through a traditional way where we have to go out, procure, build, operate our own energy utility infrastructure. In fact, we will plug into Markham District Energy as part of this arrangement for that entire campus. And that is, as you know, an internationally recognized approach. We think that's essential. In terms of looking at the building, as the President has said, it will be a very efficient, economical approach to implementation. We are looking and committing to a minimum of LEED Silver certification, and as we evolve the process and move a little bit further, I think we actually would see LEED Gold as part of the aspiration. And indeed, we're looking at this as an exercise in city building. Markham, in that center, has defined itself, I think, to be wanting to be on the leading edge of sustainability. So in fact, the expectation is everything in that center will be a LEED Silver certified or better. So I think those are a couple of ways that I would say we're adhering to that. Going back to the comment earlier about how we're actually implementing the project, we're leveraging infrastructure that's already built, whether it's athletic facilities, as I've talked about, figuring out different ways to deliver those student spaces and library spaces on campus. In a way, we've been able to come up with what I would characterize as real value for money. It's part of the question earlier, I think, Michelle, you asked if we're competitive. You know, part of us being competitive in this context is actually to show that we are going to be able to do the same or better kind of experience with a lot less investment, be it physically, financially, and so forth. So I think the transit infrastructure, it's already there. What we're going to do is take advantage and use what the government has already invested in and make sure it's used to its fullest extent possible. To me, that's another, I think, reflection of how we can argue that we are a sustainable solution.
Could I just add that we have a tremendous opportunity here to take advantage of our own expertise. And obviously, given the timeline of trying to get this proposal in by the end of September, things are moving very quickly. But once you get the proposal in, and assuming a positive result, we actually have a couple of years to really think this through. We have researchers on campus right now who are doing research on sustainability. Gary and I were just interviewed recently on it. We have a task force on sustainability. We have a faculty. So we've got a great deal of expertise, and we should take advantage of that expertise and sit down and have our own internal group where we are looking at what are the opportunities for us to take advantage of our own expertise and actually apply it into this campus.
Thank you. Our next question will come from an alumni, Bill Porter, who asks, some other universities have alumni halls or houses. Is this something that York University is considering? If so, when? And perhaps we can address this to Vice President O'Hagan.
Thank you very much. It's great to get a question from one of our great alumni, and I know that we actually have a lot of alumni here in the room. Put up your hands if you graduated from this university. All right.
Oh, wow.
Look at this. Everywhere I go, I ask that question, and I always get lots of hands. I know that we have many staff and faculty who work here who also graduated from this university, and I hope to see as many of you as I can on Friday morning with our campus alumni breakfast as part of our homecoming celebrations that start tomorrow. This is homecoming weekend, so it's great to get a question about our alumni and about a potential alumni hall or alumni house. Let me just say, first of all, that obviously our most important constituency here at the university are our students. They're incredible, and they all of them, of course, graduate, right? They all graduate and become alumni. So students are here for a number of years, and they live this great experience on this campus and at Glendon. But then they become alumni, and they stay alumni for life. And we now have over 270,000 alumni living around the world, excelling in every field and doing incredible things. And that number is growing by 10,000 every year. So you can see that the trajectory for our alumni growth is tremendous. And we put a great deal of effort into connecting with our alumni. Many of our alumni are here on campus regularly, volunteering to teach students, to mentor students, to be involved in the projects that we do. Our alumni support us tremendously with their financial contributions and in other ways. We're also, as many of you know, in the early stages, in the quiet phase, as we call it, of our next major fundraising and alumni relations campaign. Since the end of the last campaign a few years ago, we've raised over $140 million from our donors. 25,000 donors have given over that period of time, and 14,000 of those are our alumni. So our alumni are very important to us. All that is to say, the alumni community is tremendously important to us. In the plans that we're putting in place for expansion of the university here on this campus, for new expansion potentially at this new campus, and working with the deans on the various projects and priorities, and with the provost as well, we would love to see something like an alumni hall or an alumni house here on campus. There's a number of steps that we would go through for major capital projects, working with Vice President Brewer and others. I can tell you we don't have immediate plans in place yet for that kind of project, but it is certainly something that we would aspire to. There's a number of emerging projects with some existing spaces on campus that may see that sometime in the future. I wish I could tell you it was something that we were immediately planning, but it's not. But it's certainly something that we would love to do, to have more alumni engaged here on campus more often, to have a place where they could gather, that could also be used to interact with students and faculty and staff and researchers as well. So who knows what the future will bring, but the future is certainly bright for this university with respect to the support that it gets from its alumni. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is related, so we'll move on to a question that's actually for Vice President Brewer around priorities. So the question comes from David Aperador, a student, who asks, while I understand MTCU released its plan to ensure students receive education closer to home, and York wants to be part of the growing hub that is occurring in the York region, why isn't the university putting its focus in building new structures in the Kiel, Glendon campuses and renovating its buildings, given that they are in heavy need?
Actually, every time I come onto campus and see all the construction and cranes and traffic diversions, I wonder whether we can actually take much more construction. But it's actually a good question, and I think I'll come at it a couple of ways. I absolutely acknowledge the issue that's raised by the student about the state of the Kiel and the Glendon campuses. And you know, certainly I can say that we continue in a financially constrained environment to try to invest as much as we can in those both those campuses to keep the buildings in as good a state of repair as we can. You know, in terms of order of magnitude, since 2007, we put in about $60 million into what I would call deferred maintenance, just trying to deal with some of those core infrastructure kinds of issues. On top of that, several years ago, we put in place a $40 million energy management program, which by design actually dealt with an awful lot of the building renewal issues. More recently, we've embarked on a $70 million program to renew and improve the state of all of the residences on campus. So just those three programs alone, you quickly get to a number, you know, well over $100 million, which in and of itself is a large number. The challenge, of course, we have is the actual value of the York infrastructure we're trying to deal with is about $2 billion. So again, it's a lot of money. We are trying to focus on it. We'll continue to focus on it, but it is a challenge. Good news in terms of the maintenance is in the last provincial budget, the province, I think, has recognized the needs to develop sources of funding for universities to look after their existing infrastructure. So we anticipate over the next several years the amount of money we receive from the government for facility renewal will move from about 1.5 million annually to over 6 million annually 3 or 4 years out. So it's a positive step, it's a meaningful step that should also help. So moving then from the deferred maintenance, if you actually recall the slide the President showed about other campus projects, in fact, we're not ignoring the Kiel campus and the Glendon campus. We have a number of projects that are in various stages now. The Student Center project, great project that is actually being driven by our students. The students themselves have gathered, moved through a process working with us to come up with a proposal that will be funded through a referendum that was approved last fall that will add almost 130,000 square feet of student space on campus funded from students. That project is in the final stages of financial costing and approval. We have another project to expand the Schulich School of Business that'll be funded primarily through fundraising. The quad residence at Pond and Sentinel, 800 beds. We expect, assuming city approvals, to have open in the fall of 2016. You saw as well a science, an engineering and science proposal that will also be part of our major capital expansion submission to government for this campus to respond to critical space needs we have for our engineering, science, and general academic needs. And finally, Glendon, we're working with the principal and his team to put together a proposal for the second stage of Glendon capital expansion that follows on the very successful Center of Excellence first phase that we completed a couple of years ago. So we are trying to address through both ongoing as well as new projects the needs of our existing campuses.
Thank you. Perhaps we can line up a couple questions from inside the House. Are there any questions in here? There's two along that corridor there. So, thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Shazil Puri. I'm a student and I work at the Annual Fund Office at York University. My question is in regards to student safety on campus. I know that York has had to deal with several things in the press about campus safety. So my question is in regards to the campus in Markham, the proposed campus. Would things like Go Safe and, you know, the blue light telephone things around campus and things like that, would they all be put in place there as well, and maybe added security so that that campus doesn't have to deal with the things that this campus has?
Absolutely, the safety of that campus will be paramount in the design and planning of the campus and ultimately how it's operated, and we would see that fully integrated with the overall York safety program. So all of the things that you would expect, be they blue lights, be they Go Safe, York security staff on campus, you know, providing that level of safety that our security officials offer. All of those things would be part and parcel of the implementation.
Thank you. And I did notice that the Go bus stop is a little off campus or a little further down. So for that too, they would have some kind of facility or, you know, something to walk students there? Because over here it's on campus. It's in the main bus loop.
Yeah, and I think what you're seeing there is the current configuration. So obviously, as part of the development of the Markham Center, there will be the creation of a new transit hub. And so there's still a number of aspects of our plans that will have to be responsive to the condition that ultimately we find. But obviously, in the provision of parking and the provision of the transit operations, we will continue to be very mindful of the needs of our faculty, staff, and students, that we do operate essentially on a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week basis, and make sure that there's all of the appropriate provisions in place to provide a safe environment.
Thank you so much.
And we had another question directly behind.
Hi there. So my name is Prakash Amar Surya. I'm a student at York University, and this is just a question. So students have been informally discussing about how tuition increases will be happening next year, and considering all the current developments on campus, as well as putting aside public funding and donors, how would the new campus affect current students' tuition as well as incoming students' tuition?
I actually didn't quite hear the question.
I think there's been a request that you repeat the question.
Sure. Just in a gist, considering all developments on campus for the Kiel campus and Glendon campus, and putting aside public funding, donors and stuff, how would tuition be affected by the creation of a new campus, or would it be affected at all?
Would the tuition be affected by the creation of a new campus?
The effect of the new campus on tuition, I honestly don't see that having any effect on student tuition. There are remember, what we are asking for here for the government, it's what I will call one-time money. It's funds that is required for construction and for developing the project. The operating dollars, which student tuition fees feeds into this is for running the day-to-day life of the university. So the student there will pay tuition, and the tuition, together with the government grant as a result of the student enrollment, will represent the main part of the operating money with which we're going to run the day-to-day life of that campus, the way we do it here. But for the one-time investment that we need to build this campus, all the money will have to come from government, from York region, from Markham, and from other sources, which is not really going to invade the tuition fees that's paid by the students. Certainly, I don't see an increase in tuition fees as a result of this. We may see increase of tuition fees not dissimilar to what has been happening in the past for other reasons.
Thank you.
I have a related question from Christopher Ford, a student within LAPS, who asks, what, if anything, is York University doing to lower tuition fees for international students?
Tuition fees for international
International students specifically, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, our position is very clear, and I can give a more detailed answer, but let me put it this way. From a practical point of view, first of all, let me state that internationalization is very important to us. Having international students here is an essential element of creating what we talk about in terms of preparing our students to be citizens of the world. We want international students. They add value to the experience of our students. They add value in the classroom, and they become eventually great ambassadors for Canada and for York University as they leave. So internationalization is part of our priorities. So let's put that aside. Second is that we have to cover the cost. Money has to come from somewhere. The government gives us our sources of money, as you know, two: tuition fees for the average Canadian student, tuition fees, and the government grant. For international students at the undergraduate level and the graduate level, the government does not give us a grant. So we have to charge the real cost. We try through whatever channels to find scholarships and so on to support them. Then we have to charge them the full cost, which is essentially the combination of, it's essentially what we receive for a domestic student, a combination of the tuition fees that the domestic student pay as well as the government grant. That's why the tuition fees are significantly higher, because we have to recover the cost. Otherwise, we'll have to increase your tuition fees. And it's just, money has to come from somewhere. Historically, my concern has been more about PhD students, since government encourages universities to take on PhD students from international sources. And the objective is that they want more graduates with PhDs to be able to support the Canadian economy and Canadian social development and so on and so forth. And as I say to government, if you really want us to do that, why you're not funding us the way you're funding us with domestic students? If you expect many of them or most of them to stay on, why aren't you funding us? So that has been an issue of concern for me, particularly that these graduate students actually do contribute to the research enterprise as researchers, and the research is done in Canada and for the benefit of Canada. So this has been a concern of mine over the years. No, I mean, again, I think you are looking at somebody who was one day in his life an international student. So I understand the issues, but there's no way at the undergraduate level particularly to charge anything comparable to the domestic fees unless the government invest in them the way they invest in domestic students.
Could I just add a couple of points, though? I think it's really important that everyone understands the funding challenges that all universities are facing. Nevertheless, York tries very hard to ensure that our international fees are competitive to other universities. In fact, we are not at the highest level of fees that are being charged. So we understand that a lot of our students have financial challenges trying to get a higher education. And so we do try our best to monitor those as much as we can. But even more importantly than that, both through the Council of Ontario Universities executive heads, which are those are the presidents, but also through the OCAV, which is the Ontario Council of Academic Vice Presidents, we are both actively engaged with government in raising the issue that government does not provide funding, the grant funding for international students, and moreover, recently with the introduction of that international student levy, which was passed right on to international students to pay, to try to get that removed. So we are actively with our counterparts trying to do what we can with government. If they are interested in having a robust international student population, which absolutely enhances the quality of the student learning experience and the reputation of the university, then they need to be addressing that. And so we continue to do that. And we've recently been in conversations with even trying to work with a group of our international graduate students in lobbying government together to see if that would have a more powerful impact.
Thank you. There's a question here.
I'm Dave Sweet, CSPO Maintenance Supervisor, and I have a question. The Markham campus, will CSPO be part of the maintenance if it does go through? Will we maintain it? Will we be part of the new build?
Yeah, and actually, Dave, I'm glad you kind of flagged a point as well that I can build on a previous answer. So yeah, certainly the expectation is that this is a York University campus, and York staff will be the ones who are providing the services. And indeed, to the earlier question about deferred maintenance, one of the elements that we are including in our proposal to government is a recognition of the need not just to build the campus, but to operate it and to maintain it. So to give some assurance to the Keele and Glendon campus folks, in our budget we will be including a specific set aside to deal with the ongoing life cycle maintenance costs associated with the facility. So we will not be worsening our deferred maintenance by adding yet more buildings that we aren't maintaining at a standard. So we will be providing for that explicitly right up front in the budget plan. The final piece of your question, which I think I heard, is you talked about the build of the project. The only aspect of this that I think we do have to wait and see is the actual physical implementation of the project, the construction. Government has been moving towards greater reliance on its own organization, Infrastructure Ontario. Many of you may have heard of Infrastructure Ontario. They do hospitals, they do a lot of courthouses and so forth. They have been moving into post-secondary. Indeed, the Pan Am Stadium that's being built on this campus is actually an Infrastructure Ontario managed project. Given the size of what we're contemplating here for a campus, I can almost say with certainty Infrastructure Ontario will in all likelihood be very heavy involved in the overall delivery of the actual implementation of the project.
There is a question in the balcony. Are we able to get to that question?
Hi, my name is Dawn Burns. I'm a staff member in Fine Arts. If we are successful with the bid, do you anticipate more new staff being hired, or what has that been considered?
So what we're trying in all cases where possible is to really plan as efficiently as possible and be thinking about a whole entire governance structure for the new campus. So it's anticipated that we're doing two things. One, that there will be a core group of student support staff, that the idea would be a one-stop shop concept, that looking at this very much from the student's point of view, So a group of staff who would be they would be familiar with a variety of different programs and have a multi-skill set that, when students come in, they would be able to go to any number of those staff who would be together and make it easier for students to not necessarily have to go from one location to another, but it would all be available there. And then, of course, from each of the programs that would be offered in the new campus, there would have to be appropriate administrative support staff for each of those programs. So we're looking at both of those, and they would absolutely included in the model would be staff for both of those purposes.
Okay. I have a question from Roger Keel, a faculty member, who would like to ask, will the new campus offer a program in suburban studies? We could be a national center for it, given Yorku's research. This is directed at Vice President Lenton.
So, program
suburban studies. There's an interest in suburban studies.
Urban studies.
Oh, urban studies.
Suburban.
Suburban.
Oh, suburban.
Suburban.
That's
Suburban.
too specific.
Maybe you should spell it for me. I might not get it right. I think that's a great idea, first of all. And maybe I should talk a little bit more about how we're proposing and how we've come to the programs that we have for the new campus. There's been a lot of conversation so far on the campus, referring to the campus as the Markham campus. And of course, it is the location now revealed in Markham, I understand that. But from the very beginning, in terms of even of how we approached all of the municipalities, we very much had the view that this new campus is about having a York Region campus, and that's how the municipalities feel about that as well. This is an opportunity for us to really extend the way in which we interact and build our partnerships with our surrounding communities throughout the entire York Region area. So we went to all of York Region, the municipalities. There's also been a fair amount of research done on York Region, emerging student needs and emerging labor market needs in the region. There's been reports on priority areas. So we took a look at all of that. We also took a look at where we have unmet demand, where there's high student demand. We took a look at our student surveys where students indicated that they chose another university because York didn't have a particular program area. We talked to the faculties through the deans to ask them about what they would see as a great opportunity to complement the programs that we have here, very much always mindful that it's not about what we're doing here and what we're doing there. It's about what is the strategic plan that we need to have in place for York University to fully realize our vision for ourselves, our mission, our priority areas. So with all of that conversation, each of the faculties, through the deans and through consultations that we're now having with each of the relevant academic units, we came up with a proposed slate so that we would have a broad range of programs and programs that would respond to all of that of what I have just said, to student interest, labor market needs, opportunities to move into new program areas and extend the comprehensiveness of our programs. But always building, coming back to that strategic mandate agreement of our 10 areas of strength. So building on our areas of strength, but also is the new campus an opportunity for us to advance the 5 areas that we identified as areas for potential growth in the short term. And so we want to be sure, as we're actually now having those further consultations over the next period of time and really solidifying the programs that we're going to have there, thinking both in terms of the curricular programs, but also the research agenda at this new campus, taking into a very broad consultation what are the very best slate of programs that we can put forward, thinking very much about the region and the needs of the region. So I think absolutely something in suburban, I think I've got it now, in suburban area would be absolutely a fantastic idea for this campus. And we look very much forward to continuing those conversations with the faculties and in the units in really coming up with the best campus that will complement what we are doing both at Kiel and at Glendon.
Thank you. We're coming down to the tail end of our program here this morning. So are there any more questions in the room before I turn to another one from email? There is another question in the balcony. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Walter Silva, the current president of QP 1356. I commend your session. I believe in growth. I think you're on the right track. And I guess my question, and I did have several questions, but they were all answered through your answers. But I do have one more, and that is, I'm hoping that you will be successful in your bid. But what can we do as employees, as students, as current members of this campus, to help you in your cause, without hurting ourselves on this campus as well? In other words, we want to see everybody succeed. This campus, the new campus, all the faculties, everybody, if possible. Is there an answer for that?
So I hear the question. I'm not sure I heard it right, but I hear the question that you want us to, what can people here on campus do to help make it happen? Am I correct? Okay. So first of all, lots of people have worked in support of Gary and Rhonda and YUDC in terms of putting together the proposal that we are submitting already. So we're very grateful to everybody for that. I think at this stage, to be honest, since I believe it is important for the future of York University, I think we will have to lobby for this. We will do our part, lobbying the community, the politicians, and so on, in order to make everybody aware. We're not trying to get something that we don't deserve or we shouldn't get. We're trying to get something because I think it is the right thing. I think it is aligned with the public policy objectives, and it is aligned with the needs of the local community. So I think whatever you do, when you talk to your colleagues, when you talk to friends, just bring it up. Keep on showing pride in York and telling people how York can transform the York region and accelerate its development into an area, a prosperous area, both socially and economically. And let's work together and make it happen. I don't know if my colleagues would like to add anything to this. But thank you for the question.
Well, it's actually nice to know that your sentiments are echoed, that you're not the only person to ask that question. We had that very same question from Ross. What can the community do to support the initiative and gain traction? So there are some supportive questions coming in with regards to the project as well. It's nice to note. We have time for one more question. Is there anybody in the House who would like to close us off? No? So I will take a question from one of our email questions. It changes the track a little bit, but it's on a different topic entirely that we haven't had a chance to address that might be nice to hear a little bit about. Given that York will be the hosting site for one of the Pan Am Games, hosting parts of the Pan Am Games, what opportunities will be given to York students and faculty and staff to be a part of the celebration?
You can start.
Sure.
Let me just start with that by saying that this is a very exciting opportunity for York University. And we have just recently, there were a lot of individual conversations that were going on because, of course, the Pan Am office, they're the ones directing the Pan Am Games and the Para-Pan Am Games, Toronto 2015. And so we're just one of the partners, the players that they're talking with as they move forward. But we have just recently actually formed a committee to bring together all of these different conversations, because we don't want to miss an opportunity to be sure that we are engaging the community, our faculty, students, staff, and so forth. It's unclear right now at this particular time the exact ways in which we will be able to involve our students, but I'll just give you one example. So our Vice Provost students, Janet Morrison, is very much in conversations with, and just even sharing with Toronto 2015, the experiential education opportunity that could be created by having our students either assessing the whole development of the games or in some way being able to participate in one way or another from the outside. And so we are trying to encourage those conversations. We know that there are a number of celebrations that will be on campus, the opening, the closing, and a number our AGYU is involved in a closing ceremony. And so we're looking at every opportunity, in every particular initiative that we're doing, whether or not we can think about aligning an academic conference at the same time that the games are going on, how we would be thinking about our convocations at that time, like every particular kind of activity that we will be undertaking, in each case always thinking about what is the opportunity to engage our faculty, our staff, and our students so that we'll all share in that opportunity together.
Maybe just a couple of quick additional points. In terms of getting involved in the games, as Rhonda said, it really is coordinated through Toronto 2015. They're looking for 25,000 volunteers. They have an online website to apply. So if any member of the York community wants to dive into this process, probably the best path is to actually go through the website, apply, let them know you're from York, and hopefully through their apparatus they'll be able to perhaps get you assigned through that part of the process to be part of the on-campus experience. And then maybe just coming back to the point that Wally made earlier about getting engaged and helping build some excitement on the project. One of the items that I think we will see very shortly is a formal ribbon cutting for the stadium. It's been a long time coming and being able to say we're pretty close, but that would be a great opportunity as a formal event on the Kiel campus for the ribbon cutting of that stadium. And to the extent that we had a great turnout of York faculty, staff, and students as part of it, it would show our community support and begin to really build the buzz as we work towards next summer.
I suggest you sign on the website, Yes to York and York. Yeah, the more the better.
And to remind us of the website, actually, as we close, if you would like to learn more about the Markham campus and the ongoing efforts, please do go on to the yestoyork.ca website and continue the conversation. There's also an opportunity to continue asking questions. If you have questions that come up later on today or that you didn't have a chance to ask, please go on to the Town Hall website at yorku.ca/townhall and ask those questions there, and we'll try and ensure that you receive your answers. So at this time, I would like to say thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to all of you for sharing your ideas, to those of you who participated via the web media outlets, and thank you for being part of the ongoing conversations that are occurring here at York University. Have a great day.